I'm Dwight Drummond. Tonight, confrontations break out after police move in to clear a downtown homeless encampment. The removal was met with protest and scuffles, along with a number of arrests. We'll have the latest on the situation. Plus,
what we would probably be ready now as a province, either before or after the long weekend, would be to open tennis courts, soccer fields.
with COVID-19 cases in the province continuing to fall, the Ford government is facing more calls to allow some activities to resume. And
fire in the ambulance.
I'm having a baby on the 407.
their baby didn't want to wait for the hospital. We'll hear from the couple at the center of the highway delivery drama. Not going to make you wait. Going to give you that story right now. Talk about making an entrance. A Whitby woman gave birth on the side of the 407 and the whole thing was caught on tape. Natalie Collada caught up with mom, dad, and baby number 3 to talk about their incredible story.
I just think my water just broke.
This is how the story starts. Erica Campbell convinced she had time before baby number 3 entered the world.
So let me shower.
So you're gonna take a shower?
Yeah.
Dad, Troy, less so.
I think we should go.
As her first contractions got closer together, the Whitby, Ontario couple got on the move, stressed but still cool.
We still have to decide on middle names.
The camera rolled to capture the birth story on video, but as they hit the highway, worry set in.
She went from let's chill, let's take a shower to you better hurry.
The baby decided to cut to the chase.
I gotta push.
You gotta push? What do you mean you gotta push?
On the side of the highway, 11 minutes from the hospital,
Babe, is the baby coming?
Yes!
Okay, I'm pulling over.
they made 2 frantic calls to the midwife and 911.
I'm having the baby side of the highway right now. I can see the baby's head is out.
The ambulance wasn't there yet, but Nova Marie Campbell was on her way. The drama about to get so much more intense.
Baby's out, baby's out, baby's out, baby's out, baby's with mommy. Jesus.
Do not hang up.
I want you to hold the baby against your chest, Erica.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the vehicle description?
White Dodge Ram. White Dodge Ram.
Is the baby crying, Erica?
No, not yet.
Okay, you're doing a good job, okay? Tell her to take slow, deep breaths. Do not pull on anything.
Not pulling.
Okay. Is the baby crying? Wipe its mouth.
Yes, thank God.
It was a very, very, very scary 20 seconds.
I just wanted the baby to cry, so that was my first concern.
Now home, everyone's safe, healthy, and happy. Nova Marie's arrival continues to bring joy.
It was a great moment to have been captured.
The couple posted the video online. It's generated thousands of views and many congratulations.
There's so much stuff on TV right now that, kind of puts people in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And to share something like this, like so many people are telling me like this video is making them feel good.
Adding a little brightness and love in the middle of the pandemic. Natalie Collada, CBC News, Whitby, Ontario.
And some more good news tonight. For the second day in a row, the province has seen new cases of COVID-19 stay well below the 2,000 mark. Health officials are reporting 1,588 cases, the fewest in just over 2 months. There's also been a big drop in the 7-day average, which is down almost 1,000 new daily cases in the past 10 days. That has one member of Ontario's Science Advisory Table saying schools could safely reopen by the end of the month. Lorena Redekop has more.
People continue to ignore the stay-at-home order when it comes to outdoor activities, including for sports. A member of the province's Science Advisory Table says those could officially reopen safely.
Immediately before or after the long weekend, outdoor spaces, as we said, tennis courts, soccer fields, etc.
Next up, he says, would be schools.
Perhaps 4 weeks before the end of the academic year, this would be excellent. And then we need to wait. That's important.
That would mean having kids back in classrooms by late May. A spokesperson for the education minister wouldn't confirm the province's plan, but says they'll continue to follow the advice of the chief medical officer and that in-person learning is critical to children's mental health, well-being and development. Dr. Peter Uni says around the end of June, outdoor dining could safely start.
Let's get a really great summer together, and we can do that if we all get vaccinated, if we all go out and just behave safely outdoors. We can do that. We don't need, the province, we don't need politicians to tell us what to do.
The province isn't officially putting out any plan just yet, but the Solicitor General sounded cautious.
I guess I'm asking respectfully for people to be patient. We are so close.
She also suggested lifting restrictions will happen based on the type of business, not region by region.
When what happens is people are more likely to move from place to place.
This family is fine holding off on lifting restrictions for a bit.
If they're dropping, keep things closed for now. And if we're going to call it a stay-at-home or a lockdown, just keep it locked down for now.
Others are frustrated, ready for outdoor activities to be allowed.
It's embarrassing a little bit, yeah. I don't understand why we can't go out and, enjoy activities responsibly.
Definitely golfing, so we can get out of the city and go golfing. Cottaging.
The Science Table is expected to give its latest modeling on where it appears things are headed tomorrow. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
With the long weekend approaching, Toronto's medical officer of health is hoping that history won't repeat itself and is asking everyone to not gather with people outside your household.
Our track record after holiday weekends could use some improvement. At the Board of Health meeting earlier this month, I noted that after every holiday weekend over the last year or so, we've seen an increase in COVID infections. So please, this weekend, do get outside. Enjoy the weather. Be safe. And remember, there's more at stake this holiday weekend than perhaps there has been for a very long time.
So what can you do? The City of Toronto opened nearly 20,000 more vaccination appointments over the long weekend and another 10,000 appointments for next week. Good news for young people in Peel. Starting tomorrow, teenagers who live or work in the region will be eligible to book a vaccine.
Those over 12 plus will be eligible for vaccines starting Thursday, May 20th. This new vaccine coverage for a new age cohort in Peel region is welcome news. And I want to thank Peel Public Health for adapting so quickly. The more people we get vaccinated, the sooner we're going to get back to normal.
So far, the Pfizer vaccine is the only vaccine authorized by Health Canada for kids in this age group. Brown is encouraging those who are 12 and up to book through the region of Peel site, reminding residents that children must be accompanied by an adult to get their vaccine. As new COVID cases and hospitalizations continue to fall, some hospitals in Ontario will be able to start up non-emergency surgeries again. The Chief Medical Officer of Health has rescinded an order that put those surgeries on hold. As Farmer Morelli tells us, it's welcome news for those who have had procedures postponed.
That's the number of admissions in the hospital.
For weeks, Gary Giles has been tracking daily hospital admissions on his own in hopes of learning when his turn will finally come to get surgery.
I've been recording that and watching as the numbers come down to see whatever number it is they'll let us back in.
A slip on a puck while chasing his grandson on ice tore one of the tendons attached to his shoulder.
It's in the front here.
His April 30th surgery to repair it was canceled 2 weeks before.
And it has to be sewn back on, which involves 4 screws and pulling some sutures, I guess, back and forth, which sews the tendon back onto my shoulder.
Giles is one of thousands of Ontarians who had their non-urgent surgeries postponed because of the massive strain hospitals were facing with COVID-19 admissions. Today, a sign that things are getting better. The Ministry of Health sent out this memo to healthcare providers saying new cases, hospitalizations, and ICU admissions are trending downward. And while it said numbers remain high, it says it's starting to see more capacity. Non-urgent procedures can gradually resume.
If they are operating in
but it'll be up to individual facilities, depending on capacity.
They can start doing some day surgeries, but they have to be in areas where they're not up against a hot zone area. There's a number of rules around that, but they can start with some day surgeries.
What does this mean practically for the hospital?
Practically, it still continues to be a balancing act for us because we still have a high number of COVID patients in our ICU.
Humber River Hospital is in one of those hot zones. They're contending with burnt out and fewer staff and say it'll be a phased return to procedures.
We are basically ramping up in stages. So, for example, as of May 25th, we will ramp up to about 30% capacity in our operating rooms. Like, we were even lower, we were close to about 20%, but we would be going to about 30 to 35%. And then May 30th, and our clinics would be ramping up to 50%, and then so on and so forth.
For Giles, the waiting game continues until he gets the call, which he hopes is very soon.
I get messages from my kids saying, when's Grandpa's arm going to get better so we can play again? So it'll be nice to be able to do that again.
Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Speaking of playing, Leaf fans have waited decades for the team to meet arch rivals, the Montreal Canadiens, in the playoffs again. The wait ends tomorrow night when the puck drops on the highly anticipated series. And while Montreal is getting ready to welcome a small number of fans back to their arena, it appears that's still a ways off here in Toronto. Nick Boisvert explains.
The last time the Leafs and Habs faced off in the playoffs, things looked different for many, many reasons. This time around, the trend continues in perhaps the most glaring way of them all. When the puck drops tomorrow night, there won't be a fan in sight. That's because of Ontario's ongoing stay-at-home order.
We've received every indication that that order will stay in place until the date it is due to expire, which is at the very beginning of June.
But in Montreal, restrictions are set to loosen on May 29th, just in time for a possible Game 6. If the series gets that far, that means up to 2,500 people could be allowed in the building.
There is value, obviously, for a lot of people in going to the game. There's value in the team and having fans there, but there's also a risk, and the risk is still pretty present.
In the U.S., that's already pretty common. The Carolina Hurricanes hosted 12,000 fans at their game against Nashville on Monday. Restrictions there have been mostly lifted, and experts say the risk of those gatherings is something of a mystery.
Very similar to putting a canary down a sort of coal mine. We need to have a sense, is it safe for people to return to these crowded events?
Toronto's top doctor says the risk is probably not worth it.
We have, a real opportunity to enjoy a wonderful summer and, a post-COVID restriction kind of life. And that really does depend on each and every one of us. And it depends on all of us following the best available science.
The Leafs could be in the second round of the playoffs by the time Ontario's stay-at-home order lifts on June 2nd. That would be yet another change from 1979, when the Leafs were swept out of the playoffs by Montreal. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
Fingers crossed for a second round, Colette. Don't need to cross our fingers for any great weather because it continues.
Yeah, that's right, Dwight. We certainly are seeing these kinds of conditions carrying on with our temperatures way above seasonal in terms of what we're experiencing. Humidity, though, is going to begin creeping up as we head into tomorrow. So that's something we'll be watching. I'll be talking about Humidex values. Haven't done that in quite some time. This is, look, first of all, at the daytime highs for today. So 28 for Markham, 27 Toronto and Oshawa, St. Catharines, all around the Golden Horseshoe. We're seeing numbers like this. And even the current temperature is holding. The sun doesn't set till 20 to 9. So we get this nice evening warmth as well to be able to enjoy that with some sunshine still carrying on too. Now, we did have a few extra clouds today. Fair weather stuff in terms of what we've been experiencing. But if you are looking for a little bit of wet weather, pretty slim chance as we go into the next 24 hours, but there's a few spots. So early tomorrow morning, a few isolated showers, a little more cloud cover in the morning hours, into the afternoon becoming more of a mix of sun and cloud, and again, a slight chance for just a few pop-ups into those afternoon hours. It's mostly, for most folks, going to be a dry day once again. And is it going to be a warm day? Yes, it is. After a low of 29 degrees, a little cooler near the lakeshore, of course, but we are talking about a Humidex value around 33 or so tomorrow afternoon. Dwight, I'll talk about how much longer this is going to go on when I come back.
We will see you in a bit. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
This weather update is brought to you by Train. For a limited time, take advantage of 36 equal payments and 0% financing. It's hard to stop a train.
A number of people were arrested after clashes broke out today between protesters and police over a homeless encampment near Liberty Village. The city says it sent in officers after dozens of attempts to relocate the encampment residents. Jessica Ng shows us what happened.
Don't tell me their support. Tensions flared outside Lamport Stadium between protesters and police. Officers were called in after protesters attempted to block the city from dismantling an encampment.
My friends are here. I'm used to it. I don't want to move anywhere. They can't force people.
The city moved in this morning after issuing trespass notices last week. It says everyone living in the encampment had been offered housing, but many don't want to move. Joey Moget says it's community and safety that keeps him here instead of going to a temporary hotel shelter.
There are too many security people that are getting hurt and robbed in there. That's why we don't want to go there.
The mayor says the encampments are unsafe. In December, a tent outside Lamport Stadium caught fire and exploded.
There does come a time when we have to take some action in this regard and establish that we cannot have people living continuously in unsafe, unhealthy, and illegal circumstances in our public parks.
Tory saying today that city staff have visited the Lamport Stadium encampment 107 times this year, offering people a place in hotels.
We will go back at the efforts we're making to make sure that the hotel and other shelter accommodation we provide for those experiencing homelessness are as safe as they can possibly be.
Advocates say the city needs to do more.
The city must end its violent violation of the rights of those in parks and find a way to offer real housing solutions and real disease prevention.
Police say several arrests were made, mostly for trespassing, though one person was arrested for assaulting an officer. Police say those arrested were protesters and not people living in the encampment. Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
The investigation into an allegation of sexual misconduct involving Major General Denny Fortin is now complete, and the matter is now in the hands of a Crown official on whether criminal charges should be laid. Late last week, Fortin abruptly left his post leading Canada's vaccine logistics. A senior government official said that sudden departure was prompted by this referral to the prosecutor's office. CBC News has confirmed the investigation involves an allegation of sexual misconduct that predates 2015. Fortin's lawyer says his client only learned of the specifics of the allegation this past weekend and that he categorically denies it. The United States is stepping up its pressure on Israel to wind down operations against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. At the same time, Israeli media reports say Egyptian mediators are pushing for a ceasefire in the 10-day-old conflict. But the fighting continues with Israel's military pounding targets in Gaza and Palestinian militants launching more rockets into Israel from the territory and southern Lebanon. Freelance reporter Iris Mackler has the latest now from Jerusalem.
In Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip this morning, an Israeli airstrike on a building. One of the neighbours says he received a warning call from Israel's military.
They said that it was a call from the Israeli intelligence and they were warning before targeting the Al-Jabri home. They asked me to clear the area and to move all the neighbours out.
Palestinians across Khan Yunis assess the damage after Israel's airstrikes. Ahmed Al-Astal says he also received an Israeli warning 10 minutes before a missile destroyed his house.
By God, we left with our mother. We couldn't carry her, but the fear made us carry her. But in spite of all this, we will remain on our lands.
To the north in Gaza City, the Palestinian Health Ministry was also checking the damage. It's been affected by power outages and nearby missile strikes.
For the third day, the central lab in the Ministry of Health has been stopped from working. The central lab is the only place for the ministry to do special tests for the coronavirus.
Despite reports of an imminent ceasefire, Hamas rocket fire into Israel has continued as well, injuring Israelis and causing damage to property. Egypt has proposed a truce to begin in less than 8 hours' time, but Israel isn't taking any public steps towards it, including no mention in a speech Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave to foreign ambassadors this afternoon.
We are engaged right now in forceful deterrence, but I have to say, we don't rule out anything. We hope we can restore quiet. We hope we can restore it quickly. I want to say that we're doing that while doing our utmost to avoid civilian casualties.
After this speech, Netanyahu fielded a second call from US President Joe Biden, saying he wanted to see a de-escalation fast. Pressure for a ceasefire is building to provide respite for the civilians on both sides, who are effectively on the front line here rather than soldiers, and to try to enable them to rebuild damaged lives. For CBC News, I'm Iris Makler in Jerusalem.
Thousands attended a pro-Palestinian rally in Mississauga yesterday evening. Protesters chanting in Celebration Square in the city's downtown. Later, they moved to block area streets with fireworks, colored smoke, and even a flag-bearing drone. It's in response to the Israeli and Palestinian violence and airstrikes in Gaza. Their message: Canada needs to help de-escalate the conflict between Israel and Gaza.
Saying that this must end and it's time to boycott, divest, and sanction from Israel. And we're calling on the Canadian government to do so, to follow suit, to follow what the people are saying, what Canadians are saying, what workers are saying, what oppressed people around the world are saying.
It can't be a fight. A fight's when two parties are equal. That's not how it is. Their kids are dying. They're fighting with rocks when people are like sending bombs at them. Like, that's not a fight.
There are more protests like this one planned around the GTA in the next couple of weeks. When we come back, how other major cities are getting back to normal. In New York, mask mandates have been largely lifted for those who are fully vaccinated, and outdoor dining is opening up. We'll have more on their reopening and Europe's after the break. New York City has turned a corner in its recovery from COVID-19 for the first time in more than a year. More than half of the city's residents can gather in most places, indoor and out, without wearing masks. The CBC's new correspondent in New York, Chris Reyes, has more now from Times Square.
Good afternoon. Bright lights, big city. I don't know if you can feel it through the screen, but the energy is definitely starting to come back here at Times Square. I'm going to let the camera pan around so that you can soak in the sights and sounds, because this scene tells you a lot about where the city is trying to get to over the next few weeks, starting today. And let me tell you exactly what's happening, why this is a big page turner, not just for New York City, but for the tri-state region. We're talking New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Today, they are lifting most capacity restrictions. There is some nuance to that order, however. You do still have to be able to keep 6 feet apart. As long as you can do that, though, you can pack as many people as you want inside a venue. Another big deal, the mask mandate is gone in the state of New York and Connecticut, and that is if you're fully vaccinated. So some venues can still ask you to wear a mask, but the government is no longer telling you that you have to wear one. So that's a really big deal. Another notable thing is that large outdoor venues, they're going to be able to seat sections at full capacity for those who are fully vaccinated. So all of this signaling a big summer comeback for New York. Now, I did ask a local public health expert about how she feels about this. She's a little nervous. If it were up to her, she would push this closer to June when the vaccination rates are higher. But I tell you, government leaders are trying to get to that high number, about 75%, to make sure that this is very safe. And they're putting a lot of money behind it and a lot of incentives, because they are ready to turn the page. They're ready to have a summer comeback. And in fact, the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, made a big, bold promise that this city will be fully reopened by July 1st. And in case you're a Broadway fan, as I am, and you're curious about these theaters all around us, they're not quite ready to return by summertime, but theater companies say they're hoping for a September return. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Nice to have Chris on board. The EU is looking at opening its borders to vaccinated people from other countries. They're also working on a list of countries from which non-vaccinated travelers would be accepted. Tessa Arcilia has more on measures that could take effect in a matter of weeks.
With summer just around the corner, the European Union is looking to ease restrictions for international travelers. Today, EU ambassadors backed that proposal to allow fully vaccinated people back into the bloc. But these people must have received one of the vaccines approved by the European Medicines Agency. Now, there is no timeline yet, and EU heads of state will still have to give their final approval when they meet next week. But the goal is really to reopen Europe for summer travel. There are also plans to ease the criteria and expand the list of so-called safe countries from which non-essential travel is allowed. Right now, one of the criteria is looking at the infection rate. It should be below 25 per 100,000 over a period of 14 days. That could be increased to around 75 to 100 per 100,000. So that will increase the number of countries on that list. But they will also include a brake mechanism because worries about variants of concern still persist.
This will help progressively resuming international inbound travel where it's possible to do so safely, while at the same time ensuring quick action to counter the spread of new virus variants.
Now, speaking of easing restrictions, today is France's big day. Cafes, bars, restaurants, museums, theaters, all of these are able to reopen again today, albeit with some lingering restrictions. Outdoor dining service has resumed for up to 6 people. The French President Emmanuel Macron made sure that he had his morning coffee at one of those Parisian cafes this morning. Museums like the Louvre are starting to see crowds again. The Mona Lisa receiving her first visitors in months. France is the latest among European countries partially easing their COVID-19 restrictions. And the general mood here in Europe is that life is slowly getting back to normal. Tessa Arcilia, CBC News, Brussels.
After the break, Daryl Sittler gives us his thoughts ahead of Game 1 of the Toronto-Montreal playoff matchup. Plus,
a Toronto woman says she knew she wasn't feeling right, but a push from her son to go to the hospital probably saved her life.
Even though I had never felt that ill before, I'm not one to rush to the doctors. I don't go, almost never. I don't need to. I'm lucky because I've always been so healthy.
I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, we'll tell you about a Mother's Day that a doctor and a patient will always remember.
A Toronto woman says this past Mother's Day could have been her last. She wasn't feeling well and might not have gone to the hospital if it wasn't for a nudge from her son. As Talia Ricci reports, hospital staff say her story is a reminder of the importance of not delaying care as emergency departments anticipate a surge in patients who have been doing just that.
And we were not planning a big Mother's Day event because of COVID.
But Teresa Derry says one of her sons did come by to help with some yard work that weekend. She's glad he was around.
And I suddenly got a terrible pain in my neck, in my ears and in my head. My son came in and he asked me what was wrong and I told him. Immediately he phoned 911.
The healthy 71-year-old isn't sure she would have called an ambulance so quickly. She said she's normally full of energy, keeping up with her grandkids.
Even though I had never felt that ill before, I'm not one to rush to the doctors. I don't go, almost never. I don't need to. I'm lucky because I've always been so healthy.
Dr. Moral Uzunian's Mother's Day gift was supposed to be the luxury of sleeping in, but the night before came a late-night call.
There was a woman with an acute type A dissection. This is a condition where the aorta is torn from close to the heart valve, usually all the way down to the abdominal aorta. Without immediate surgery, the mortality rate is almost 100%, and it's very time sensitive.
It wasn't the Mother's Day the surgeon had planned, but it was still memorable for a different reason.
They could have lost their mother on Mother's Day, and instead now they can have more Mother's Days, with their mom. So for me, that's such a wonderful gift, and it makes my Mother's Day a lot more special.
Derry is recovering well from her surgery. She hopes that sharing her experience helps people realize the importance of seeking care when they're sick. How do you think the situation could have been different if someone didn't really encourage you to go to the hospital?
I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't gone.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
2,050 people died of opioid overdoses in Ontario during the pandemic last year. That's from a report out this morning led by the Ontario Drug Policy Research Network, the Office of the Chief Coroner, and Public Health Ontario.
One of the things that we found in this report was that there was a very striking increase in opioid-related overdose deaths during the pandemic period. So overall, there was a 79% increase between February 2020, which was the month prior to the COVID pandemic being declared in Ontario, and December 2020, which is actually the month that we saw the highest number of opioid overdose-related deaths in Ontario ever recorded, at 249 deaths.
Researchers believe the crisis is being fueled by the pandemic and a high rate of homelessness. The report also found 3/4 of the fatal overdoses involved men, most of them dying alone. The authors say the report underlines the urgency of the crisis in Ontario and the need for a rapid, coordinated response from all levels of government. More than 25,000 Canadians have died due to COVID-19 during the pandemic. That number, a reminder of the risk we are still facing. But it isn't faced equally. Canadians who can't stay home often pay a price for the public health choices others make. Joanna Remiliotis shows us for some essential workers, it is an almost unbearable burden.
It's 10:30 at night, and 4-year-old Shanvi is fast asleep. Her mom, Kavita Upadhyay, gets ready for her night shift at a nearby factory. The buses can be crowded, so her husband drives her to work, and they can't leave Shanvi alone.
There are a lot of people using the bus, and we have a kid, so we don't want to take that risk. It's better to be safe than to be sorry.
Everything they do is about staying safe, because living and working in Brampton means confronting risk every single day. The story of one of the hardest hit areas in the province can be told here, at a bus terminal where thousands of essential workers set off to dozens of factories and warehouses in the area. There have been hundreds of workplace outbreaks since last year, fueling more than 100,000 COVID cases in the region. Infections that spread in densely populated buildings and in homes with several family members. The effects can be devastating.
I can't make my balance. Whenever I move in my house, always somebody's watching me that I don't fall.
It's taken weeks to manage a few stairs. Gurinder Singh Khera is recovering from COVID, and he's lucky to be alive. Twice he was rushed to hospital and put on a ventilator. The second time, he says, he barely made it there after collapsing in his bedroom.
Finally, I'm gone. I'm nowhere.
What do you mean you're gone?
My body get almost cold, no breath, no heartbeat. So my wife started crying. My mother-in-law is downstairs. She ran upstairs. My daughter, she called 911. They gave the instructions, press the chest and whatever. They try to do it, they do it.
Gurinder's wife works at a factory where there have been outbreaks. She got sick first. Other than his daughter, everyone at home, including his in-laws, got infected. But no one as seriously as him. He says his wife is traumatized by how close he came to dying.
I feel it, she's scared. We never go to the bedroom. She's scared. Both times I go to the hospital from that bedroom. So we sleep in a family room. And what I feel for my family, that we go through the hell. If somebody says go to hell, I see the hell, honestly. So that's why I say to everyone, use precautions. If you don't need to go outside, don't go, honestly. I'm very lucky.
I'm a merchandiser, I'm a cashier, I take passport photos, I deal with customer service, I do a little bit of everything. People aren't aware. They come straight up to our faces to ask us questions or to show us something, or they follow us like literally right behind our back. They don't take into account that, you have to be far away from us. Sit. I know you want more treats. Sit.
Michaela Portali works part-time at a pharmacy and has been on her guard since the start of the pandemic.
Mama kiss?
It's been one anxious shift after another.
I've put wet floor signs all around me before just to get people to stay away from me, but they actually kicked the signs down and they came right up to me. which it kind of broke my heart and it just made me so scared.
Michaela got COVID this past March. She suspects she got infected at work.
It's okay.
She's still recovering, but her grandparents, who lived with her and her mom, also got sick. They both ended up in hospital, and both died within weeks of each other.
And it took the lives of people that didn't deserve it.
Michaela is still reeling.
And to know that it could have came from somewhere that I was working from, or someone that came too close to me, it breaks my heart. Because people don't realize how much damage they cause. You know, it's hard to lose people when you're so young. I mean, they're all I had. They were in my support system. And to possibly know that I was the one who hurt them by bringing someone from my work. Like, it's hard to live with myself.
Yeah, okay. Let's run. It's been stressful. Mentally, you keep thinking you have a kid and they can go in any way. You cannot predict the course of the disease. Run.
Kavita and her family have dodged COVID until now. There have been outbreaks at her workplace, and there are cases in her building too. She focuses on the joy in her life and gives thanks for every healthy day.
Some people are badly affected, some are very mildly affected. By God's grace, we have not been affected. But I can only be thankful to God and just take precautions.
Kavita and her husband just got their first vaccine dose. And while going to work is still a risk, the danger is starting to feel a little less dark. Joanna Rumiliotis, CBC News, Brampton.
Physically, mentally, and economically, the pandemic has had a major effect on all of us. New inflation numbers show a big but not unexpected jump last month. Stats Canada reports the increase was fueled by a spike in gasoline prices, which were up more than 62% compared to a year ago when it plunged to an 11-year low because of the pandemic. The increase pushed the annual inflation rate to 3.4% in April. A 3.4% inflation rate is the highest in decades, but far from the highest in recent memory. Check out how it has fluctuated over the last 50 years. And if you look at April 1979, it was at 9.8%. Why April 1979? Well, that was the last time our Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens met in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The two teams will face off for the first time in 42 years tomorrow night. One of the men on the ice that night was Daryl Sittler. Greg Ross spoke with him about that series and this one.
Hey, who would ever thought it'd be 42 years that these two teams would be playing in a playoff round? That's hard to believe.
And so the opening game of this series is underway. And
former Leaf captain Daryl Sittler never would have believed it back in 1979 when he played in the last playoff series between Toronto and Montreal. The Canadiens swept the Leafs in 4 straight games.
Basically, when it came right down to it, they had too much depth for all the teams in the league at that time. The series, even though we lost 4-0, they were close. There were a couple overtime games. The shots were close, so it could have gone either way.
While that series may have cemented Sittler's dislike of the Montreal Canadiens, it certainly wasn't his introduction to the rivalry between these two teams. He got his first taste in his rookie season, which was just 3 years after the Leafs last won the Stanley Cup in 1967, a series in which they beat the Canadiens.
I was drafted in 1970, and a number of the players on that team, George Armstrong, Dave Keon, Ron Ellis, Bobby Bond, they all were Stanley Cup winners, and they played the Habs. So as a young rookie coming into the league, I felt the presence of the Montreal-Toronto rivalry.
None of the current players on the Leafs roster were born when that series was played in 1979. Sittler finds it hard to believe that players today could ever feel the presence of that rivalry the way they did back then, because the league has changed so much.
With 32 teams in the league now, you don't see each other as many times, although this year obviously was, because of the Canadian division, it was fun. But I don't think it'll ever be the same as it was before.
Sittler's team may not have gotten past the Habs in 1979, but he says there's something special about the Leafs this year.
Here comes the shot, score!
Now is our time, and I think our guys feel it. I think right from the get-go at training camp, that was a message sent to the players from the coaching staff. It's what you do, the little things, game in and game out throughout the season, that is going to prepare you for when you get to playoff hockey, that you'll do it.
Sittler says he would love to be in the arena to watch the games in person, but at least for now, he says he'll watch from home. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Long-suffering Leaf fans are feeling good, but we always do before the actual games are played, don't we, Colin?
Yeah, that's right. You heard him. Now's our time. That's what he said. Direct quote there. Boy, now is our time for wonderful weather that's more like, June or getting into July in terms of the temperatures that we're seeing. And we've had these dry conditions too. Well, just a very slight chance, few pop-up showers tomorrow. I'll kind of show you the 2 times of day when we have that coming at us. Getting a little more humid as we go into tomorrow. Yes, the dew point's coming up, so the air gets a little stickier, and our temperatures staying warm. They will be into the holiday weekend. It's a cold front that goes through Sunday. That will kind of cool things down as we head into Monday. So kind of the last day there, we will see that the temperatures come down and things get a little more comfortable, although it may not last long. In fact, they'll start to rise again right after that. This is a look at your current temperatures, and I'll point out Hamilton at 27 degrees. I do want to mention we haven't been seeing much mixing of the air. The winds haven't been very strong, and Environment Canada has just put out a special weather, issuing a statement there for the air quality. So the air quality, normally it's kind of in moderate levels in terms of the risk, and it's a bit higher right now this evening for the Hamilton region. So something to be aware of if you've got any kind of respiratory issues or heart issues there, to watch that you don't have any symptoms and kind of take it easy. We're seeing just a little bit of that cloud cover, no wet weather for us around the Golden Horseshoe, but for tomorrow morning, we'll have some clouds again to start the day off. Probably a little thicker than we've been experiencing. A few isolated showers popping up. This is at 7 a.m., so kind of between 6:30 and 9. Hardly anyone's going to see this, but they'll be in a few areas. And then again into the afternoon, just a few pop-up showers showing up between about 3 and 5 or 5:30, all right? That's all we get. And into Friday, same thing. The air becomes more buoyant. Few in the afternoon showing up. Tonight, your temperatures, lows in the mid-teens, lows, and highs tomorrow approaching 30 degrees with that slight chance that you could see some wet weather. And looking ahead, there you go. It's not till Sunday night into Monday where we're going to see those temperatures cooling back. We're going to lose the 2 at the beginning, going back into the teens there, Dwight.
Oh, everybody's working for this long weekend. Thank you, Colin.
Boy, yes, you're welcome.
When we come back, a historic win in the Octagon.
The referee calls it! It's an Indian world champion!
Every step of the way, I've been representing my culture and my roots.
How Arjun Buller went from Canadian Olympian to the first South Asian MMA world champion. Next. A man from Richmond, BC has made history in the world of mixed martial arts. Arjun Buller, a former Olympian, has become the first South Asian world champion. As John Hernandez reports, the athlete hopes to encourage young people from his community to chase their dreams.
All right, hand there from Buller, stunned in.
The fight was scheduled for 5 rounds.
The referee calls it! It's an Indian world champion!
But Arjun Buller finished it in 2. An historic victory for Buller, who's from Richmond, BC. He's the first mixed martial arts world heavyweight champion of Indian descent.
Just a rush of emotions, a lifetime of work. I can't say I was surprised or crazy elated because it went according to plan, but I was just fired up.
Buller's family immigrated to Canada from northern India. He started wrestling not long after learning how to walk, trained by his father.
Every step of the way, I've been representing my culture and my roots.
A career that took him to the Commonwealth Games, the Olympics, and then through the doors of a mixed martial arts gym.
I knew he was coming in with a tremendous foundation. And then I found out after that, too, that his family has been wrestling for generations.
MMA coach Adam Ryan has been by his side ever since, cornering all of Buller's contests except for his most recent championship bout. The fight was in Singapore, and travel concerns kept Ryan home.
The hardest part was the night of the fight not being there. I just had all these emotions flood into my head, and I just wrote a poem.
Nerves that were alleviated by the time the fight was over. Those who have followed Buller's career from the start call him a trailblazer.
I think for a lot of guys out there and a lot of girls out there as well who are wrestlers or who are fighters, they're going to look back at this moment and say, if this guy can do it, I can do it too.
Success the champ hopes to share with his fans in India once it's safe.
I want to take the belt back to our village where the family originally came from for a better life here in Canada.
A life that can inspire others to compete and to win. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX closed down by 90 points. The Dow also down by 163 points. Our dollar trading lower at 82.64 cents US. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Raps President Masai Ujiri spoke today about the effect the pandemic had on his team, which missed the playoffs for the first time since 2013.
We have been incredibly disadvantaged from all of this. The displacement has really did not work well against us. But I give from the top ownership, everybody from our coaching staff, players, they were incredible during this process. They tried to persevere as much as they could through adversity.
Ujiri was asked about 35-year-old Kyle Laurie's future with the team. He said Laurie is integral to our team and that his age won't be a factor in whether or not the team re-signs him. After playing in Tampa this past season because of the pandemic, Ujiri said he's determined to see the team open next season right here back in Toronto, and we can't wait to see our Raps come home. That's our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Stay safe, everybody.